Who's your favorite character to write for in this movie?
Lois Lane. I don't know if that's that's like a quick answer, but I mean I love writing all the characters. I mean really all of them, and always try to like take that moment to get into the head of each character and find their point of view about this whole thing. And the Mac over there that's chirping. But the reason I jumped right to Lois is I kind of feel like, funny for a Superman movie, she's the strongest character in the movie. She's like the most confident, badass, knows what she wants, sort of self-realized individual in the movie. So I always enjoy to write for Lois.
Favorite line of dialogue from this project?
Wow, I can't do that.
They're all your children.
That's right, the lines are my children. I'll have to wait. Have you guys seen it?
No, today.
Okay, well, I kind of feel is spoiler right here. Will people not watch this until after?
Correct.
Okay, so if you're watching this and you haven't watched the movie yet, don't watch this part of the interview. My favorite moment in this movie, and it wasn't me. I don't get credit for it. It's I think the storyboard artists. There's a moment where Lois flips Brainiac the bird. She just goes, you double bird, and it is so awesome. It is so funny. It's not dialogue, but it is so great. And I just saw it, and my jaw dropped when I saw it the first time, and I just thought, wow, we didn't get to do that on Saturday morning.
Does that make it rated R?
I'm sure it doesn't. It's PG-13. Yeah.
So, when you wrote it, I mean, obviously you probably didn't have Stana Katic in mind for the role, but I mean... I
had no idea they were going to cast Stana Katic. And how awesome is that, huh?
Yeah. Everything you described.
To a person, everyone on this thing is great. I cut up for questions, so let's get back to it. Stana, she is a great Lois Lane. She is like everything you want out of Lois Lane. She has, that gumption, that spunk. Yeah, she has spunk. And the smarts, and I was wowed. What was your question?
No, actually, it was just more commenting. I mean, how great was it that everything you described when you said you loved writing for Lois Lane?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that's kind of Stana Katic.
Yeah, she did a fantastic job. Yeah, and for me, it's like I started with these characters on the DC animated series, on the Superman series, on the Batman series, and so in my head when I go back to write a script and I'm hired to write one, the first voices in my head are Dana Delaney, Tim Daly, Kevin Conroy, the gang, but you get past that really fast, because these guys, Matt, Stana, Molly, they owned these characters, and now he's Superman, now she's Lois Lane, now she's Supergirl. John Noble is Brainiac, just fantastic.
I mean, we've only, I think all of us have pretty much seen the trailer and just hearing the voices in the trailer, because grew up with the classic ones. And hearing those voices.
You're old, Bob.
No, I mean, we're the same age. But when I heard John Noble, I was like, oh.
You would never think of John Noble from Brainiac.
No.
How awesome is that?
But how perfect was it?
Yeah. One of my concerns about this movie when I was doing the adaptation from the comic book, in the comic book he's very bulked. I said this is a new thing that Jeff Johns came up with for this Brainiac, that he's as buff as he is brain. And I was worried about the brain part being lost. And John Noble brings such intelligence to it that it really helps.
Bob, as a writer for this project, what?
Go ahead. Go, and then one more, and then we go to you.
Okay. So, as a writer for this project, you finish writing the script, and once it's written, then they start recording it with the actors. Do you ever have to go in to kind of change dialogue or work with the actors to say, okay, this might work better this way, or is that more Andre's job?
It actually is probably at that point more James Tucker's job. There's kind of an assembly line in the way that we work on these things. I work pretty much exclusively with Alan Burnett. He's the guy who hires me and makes the phone call and says, interested in working on this project. We'll meet a couple of times over the course of the writing of the thing. He'll kind of be my intermediary to notes from the studio, notes from DC Comics. But once I've delivered my whatever it is, revised final draft, I'll go through a few drafts, then Alan does maybe his pass of, stuff that he needs to do on it. Then it goes to the production team, and the production team's headed up by James, and something comes up in the recording studio when it's Andrea and James on one side of the glass and the actor on the other, then James is the guy working on it. Hi.
Hi there. So, writing the screenplay for animation versus real life people like Warehouse 13, which we love.
Thank you. Me too.
Do you find that do you have to approach it very differently because you don't have to worry about actors doing stunts, getting hurt, you don't have to worry about budgets for those sorts of things, and you rely more on the dialogue and the story that way?
It's a great question. In the big, grand sense of things, because your questions, oh my God, they're all great questions. In sort of the grand scheme of things, writing is writing, whether it's for animation or live action. My first goal is that these are real characters, that they're real people, that I'm not worrying whether it's adapting from some source material or doing something completely original, that I'm not bound by anything I've got to squeeze into a scene, kind of let the scene play out, and breathe life into these people. That they're behaving like real people, they're doing real things, and that's the same whether it's animation or live action. It's no less real just as animation. But your question's really to a good point, because there are different and sometimes surprising demands. It's actually easier to do something really big in animation, like you're saying, like a budget. It's a lot of money to, let's say, have a stadium full of people and have explosions blowing up and all that, where you can kind of do that stuff in animation. You'd be really surprised how expensive and time-consuming it is just to have two people talking in a moving car in live action. That is like an incredibly taxing thing to do. On the flip side, there are all sorts of production things you could do easier in live action, like you can't do in animation. In animation, you really have to be worried about sort of the cleanliness of the image and the cleanliness of the line, and that if there is action in a scene, that's all kind of moving on one axis and nothing's happening in different directions, because it just gets sort of like harder to expect that to animate well. And you're making sure that stuff is like, that it's going to come back from overseas and look good. And so there's a whole different pile of demands. And there's demands on each, but you kind of have to keep them both in mind. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Until Gary says our 6 minutes are up, I'm yours, guys.
You made a Brainiac look like one of the super bad guys, like put him on the map there. Why the title Superman Unbound?
The title Superman Unbound came after the stage of my involvement. When I was last involved, I think we were calling this something like Superman Lost City of Krypton. So it really was a decision with studio and home video and marketing. They came up with the title for the thing. I'm really glad that Brainiac is coming out great in this one. And as far as the portrayal of this character and what he does in it, I'm obviously following the lead of Jeff Johns' story in comic books, and I had to expand it. I had to flesh it out and find sort of a whole movie there, because it's a great story in the comics, but it's a pretty small story. It's much more contained. And I kind of had to find the 3 acts and the 75 minutes of movie that movie is there. But this sort of new, unique, different Brainiac, really the props go to Jeff for coming up with what this character's like.
What's the balance between writing specifically to adapt that story and incorporating anything else from Superman mythology that maybe wasn't contained within that story?
The balance between those. So, my first guide obviously is that book. There are things that came up in kind of the fleshing out of this thing that I had to sort of think more about the history of what's been done before with this character and sort of my favorite elements of the character and my favorite stories. Just sort of 2 big additions to this story that I made that filled it out from the comic book. Superman, again, you guys haven't seen it, so I'm just like spoiling much stuff. There's a big chunk in the middle of the movie where Superman actually spends time inside the Bottle City. He's captured in the bottle, that's something that I added. Kind of my absolute favorite thing to do with Superman as a character, as an individual. Again, looking for that. How do I find a real person here? Is tell stories where he's confronting his origins, confronting his own identity, whether he is a man of Earth or a man of another planet. The fact that he never got to really be on that planet because it was blown up before he knew anything about who he was. And so to give him these opportunities to like meet people from Krypton and kind of be on Krypton and be in the city. That's where I get kind of the meat for me of the character. And so I did look at sort of the history of what was done with stories of Superman, the Silver Age comics of him going inside the Bottle City. What was done there, what wasn't done there. The other thing is I really had to find a new thing to do with the relationship with Lois. This actually came kind of from my marching orders from the beginning when Alan gave me this assignment. In the comic books, he's married to Lois because that's what's going on in the continuity of the comics. What happens? And we wanted kind of a new storyline, a new sort of subplot to take their relationship from some new point A to some new point B that hadn't really been done in the comics before. When you talk about the 75 years history of Superman, Clark, Lois Lane, and the love triangle between them, there's very little that hasn't been done. It's hard to find something new. So there I kind of challenged myself to say, okay, what's kind of a new beat, a new thing that we hadn't seen before, or at least put a little bit of a new spin on it, and hopefully found kind of a new place to show a specific point in time in the relationship and the evolution of that relationship that ties in thematically with the story with Brainiac, and I won't go into too much detail about that because I'll let you guys kind of see how that all pans out.
Now, is there intentions maybe to have a sequel, or would we be able to have a sequel, depending on how this turns out, because we haven't seen it yet? Right.
So it happens that this movie does leave that possibility open. Again, that's a decision that's sort of outside my purview, that Warner Brothers and DC Comics and Warner Home Video, they'll decide. This movie stands alone on its own if they don't do that, and there's that opportunity to sort of, continue the continuity of what Jeff did in the comics, going into the whole new Krypton storyline. If they decide to do that, this tees it up, and it's there on the tee for them to take a swing at it.